From an eerie, abandoned island off the coast of Japan and a vacation hotspot left vacant since the 70s, to a town in Turkey filled with unfinished castles and the radioactive wasteland of Pripyat, Ukraine, here are 10 massive abandoned cities that actually exist. On March 11th of 2011, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Japan. It was the most powerful earthquake to strike Japan in recorded history and triggered a domino effect of catastrophic worst-case scenario events. According to National Geographic, the earthquake sent 40-meter tsunami waves barreling towards the Japanese coast. Those waves caused a complete meltdown at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, leading to the most severe nuclear disaster since Chernobyl. In fact, Fukushima is the only other nuclear disaster besides Chernobyl to rank as a 7 or a major accident on the International Nuclear Event Scale. Namiya, Japan got the worst of everything on that fateful day. Aside from being severely damaged by the earthquake and tsunami, the town was downwind of the power plant when it failed. All 20,000 people were evacuated, and nobody returned for an entire month to search for missing people. More than 10 years after the disaster, cleanup at the power plant and surrounding towns is in its early days. Namiya, being on the outskirts of the initial exclusion zone, has seen new light in recent years. As of 2020, the population increased from 0 to 1,200 people, but it'll be a long time until all 20,000 can move back in. The business and town hall districts have since reopened, but access to more contaminated areas in the west is strictly prohibited. Tagvarcheli was a small town on the Galitska River in the Republic of Abkhazia. If you've never heard of that, it's because most countries recognize Abkhazia as part of Georgia. During World War II and up until the fall of the Soviet Union, Tagvarcheli was a booming mining town of 40,000 people. Today, it's a ghost town full of abandoned buildings, apartments, and factories. So what happened? As the USSR fell, a brutal civil war erupted in Abkhazia between those loyal to Georgia and those loyal to Russia. Georgian forces besieged the city of Tagvarcheli, cutting them off from the rest of the country for 413 days. The people only survived thanks to airdrops from Russian separatists, but they couldn't hold out forever. They did hold out long enough for Georgia to lose control of Abkhazia, though the de facto independent nation fell into complete disarray and Georgia refused to recognize them as a country. Russia also turned on them in the early and mid-90s, but relations improved in the following years. Some sources say about 5,000 people still live in the crumbling apartments of Tagvarcheli. Others claim it's a couple hundred. The roads are in disrepair, and most of the buildings are overgrown. A Turkish company tried to reopen the mines, but it didn't work out. Most tourism in Tagvarcheli consists of people taking pictures of the ruins. China went through a massive economic boom over the past 30 years. The economic expansion created an infinite money supply for new projects and ideas, and anybody with a blueprint could build whatever they wanted. In fact, China used more concrete between 2011 and 2013 than the United States did between 1900 and 1999. One of those projects was the Kangbashi district, a massive public works project that began in Ordos, a wealthy coal mining city in Inner Mongolia. The plan was simple: build an opulent city of office buildings, museums, government centers, and middle-class apartment complexes big enough for 1 million people. And they did. The only problem? Hardly anyone moved in. China's ghost city made international headlines, but according to Forbes, that wasn't very fair. News broke about the ghost town in 2009 when Al Jazeera and Time magazine published stories about the ghost city. But Ordos had only been under construction for 6 years, hardly enough time to finish and populate a city meant for 1 million people, right? Today, about 153,000 people live there. Of the 40,000 apartments, only 500 were still on the market as of 2017. Centralia, Pennsylvania used to be a booming coal mining town with 14 active mines and 2,500 residents. But the coal mining boom came and went, and by the 1960s, the population dropped to 1,000 people. Most of the mines closed, but those 1,000 people didn't want to see their town die. Then, the last mine caught fire in 1962 and has been burning ever since. On May 27th of 1962, the town asked some volunteer firefighters to help clean up the landfill. In years past, they just lit it on fire, so they figured they'd do it again. Only this time, the fire didn't go out and spread into the abandoned coal mines. These mines snake for miles beneath the town. No matter how hard they tried to put it out, the coal kept burning. Nobody knew how bad it was until 1979, when a gas station owner and the mayor of Centralia lowered a thermometer into his underground gas tanks to find the gas was sitting at 172 degrees, which is not okay. Then, in 1981, a sinkhole opened up and almost swallowed a 12-year-old boy. The U.S. government began reclaiming and relocating residents in the 80s. By the year 2000, only 21 people were left. Today, 5 people still remain in Centralia after winning a lengthy legal battle to stay there until they pass away. A little over 8 miles off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan, sits Hashima Island, also known as Gunkanjima, which means Battleship Island. It was a booming underwater coal mining island from the late 19th century until the mid-1970s. But the coal mines dried up in 1974, and all 5,000 people left. Today, it's considered a World Heritage Site, lost to nature and tourism. CNN included it on their top 10 freakiest places on Earth list in 2019, and the 2012 James Bond film Skyfall used Hashima Island for the villain's secret hideout. However, there is a dark history behind Hashima Island dating back to pre-World War II. Hashima, among 6 other sites, forced 60,000 Korean laborers to work in the mines. This was around the time Tokyo's colonial rule over the Korean peninsula was ending. So, they were a little upset when the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, wanted to cement the island as a piece of important history. While nobody lives there today, you can book a tour from Nagasaki City to visit the island. It's about a 30-minute boat ride. Pitcher, Oklahoma was a blossoming lead and zinc mining town. About a quarter mile from Route 66, the streets used to be filled with cars and playing children. People would go to church and basketball games, and the economy was booming. Little did they know, they were breathing in toxic air basically all day. Today, Pitcher is a ghost town and considered one of America's most toxic places. Decades of lead and zinc mining left behind massive piles of toxic waste called chat that piled up around town. In 2008, an EF4 tornado ripped through the town, destroying over 100 homes and leveling buildings on Main Street. The Environmental Protection Agency deemed the town unlivable in 2009 and evacuated the residents. In less than a decade, the population dropped from 1,600 to 20. The remaining houses fell into disrepair. The schools were abandoned, and the only thing still prominently standing appears to be the Pitcher Water Tower. Even after they stopped mining in the 1970s, the damage was irreversible. The water contained massive amounts of lead contamination, and the eroded soil made sinkholes and cave-ins way too common. The small handful of people who remain call themselves chat rats. All the tornadoes, toxic waste, and sinkholes in the world couldn't drive them from their homes. As Captain McMillian once famously said, 50,000 people used to live here. Now, it's a ghost town. Cue the nostalgic memories of playing Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare after school. The ghost town he's referring to is Pripyat, Ukraine, and he wasn't far off on his numbers. About 49,360 people were evacuated on April 27th of 1986, the day after the Chernobyl disaster. The famous Ferris wheel you always see in images was part of the Pripyat amusement park, scheduled to open on May 1st of 1986, 5 days after Chernobyl. Some rumors claim the park rushed to open on April 27th to distract residents from the disaster, though those theories have never been substantiated. Then again, this is Soviet Russia we're talking about. Today, several Ukrainian companies offer guided tours of Pripyat and Chernobyl. While you are free to make your own decisions, we'd advise against it. Not only is it still slightly radioactive, but nobody has touched or maintained the buildings since 1986. Something can easily collapse and hurt you, not to mention how metal thieves like to steal the manhole covers. According to Rafael Mariano Grassi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the current radiation levels around Chernobyl do not pose a significant threat to workers or the environment. We'd rather not risk it. In 2014, a Turkish development company called Saro Group thought that they'd had the greatest idea ever. They were going to build 732 nearly identical Gothic-style homes near the Black Sea, about halfway between Istanbul and Ankara. But when the Turkish inflation rate rose to 25%, people stopped buying the tiny castles. Investors pulled out of the project in 2018, and Saro Group was forced into bankruptcy. Today, a sea of mini castles sit in various stages of completion, completely abandoned by their developers. They had sunk $200 million into the project thus far, but didn't have another penny to spare. The homes were selling for between $400,000 and $500,000 and sounded like they'd be worth the price. The villas included a jacuzzi on each level, and residents had the option of installing indoor lifts and pools. They even had a shopping, religious, and entertainment plaza planned. Some say it looks like the 2,500 workers just dropped their tools and left. While most exteriors look nice, the insides were never finished. They hope to continue the project one day, so let's not call it a total loss just yet. In the 1920s, the UK basically had a monopoly on rubber. Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company wanted a way to make their own, so they cut a deal with the Brazilian government to buy 2.5 million acres of land near the Amazon rainforest. Construction began in 1926, but was severely hindered by malaria and yellow fever. You could only get to the area via the river, as there were no roads connecting it to any major cities or highways. But that didn't stop Mr. Ford. See, Ford had bigger goals than cheap rubber. He wanted to build a utopian city based on the morals he had championed his whole life. He'd call it Fordlandia, but he'd face an uphill battle for the next 20 years. In 1930, native workers revolted, sick and tired of American food and Ford's crazy rules. Tobacco, women, alcohol, and football were forbidden, so they had to venture off the reservation to enjoy themselves. Ford gave up in 1934, and Fordlandia was officially abandoned. About 90 people were still living there in the early 2010s, and the town has seen a rebirth as of 2017. Today, about 3,000 people live in Fordlandia. Most just showed up and claimed an abandoned house. One of the more interesting facts about Fordlandia is that Henry Ford himself never actually visited the city he'd spent so much money building. In its heyday, Varsha used to be a booming resort city on the east coast of Cyprus, the island in the Mediterranean Sea near Turkey, Lebanon, and Syria. People used to call it a hub of art and intellectual activity and described it as the French Riviera of Cyprus. But it's been a ghost town since 1974, after the Turkish invasion of Cyprus Island. Violence had been brewing for years between the Greek and Turkish people of Cyprus. Then, a Greek-backed coup prompted Turkey to invade, taking total control of the island's northern region, which included Varsha. The residents left in a panic. Some even remember leaving pans cooking on the stove when the Turkish army invaded. At its peak, Varsha was home to 39,000 people. There were just over 200 left by 2011. Varsha has made strides to reopen in recent years, with some beaches opening to the public in 2020. Tourists come to take pictures of the ruins, but it'll be a while before Varsha is on par with the French Riviera again. It seems the future for Varsha is bright, with plans to reopen and repair the dilapidated buildings. To see another video just like this one, be sure to click the link on screen now. And with that, thank you for watching and be sure to tune in next time.